Welcome back to another episode of the Moz House Podcast. I'm your host, Hunter Begun, and I'm here with our current artist in residence, Tammie Dupuis. I said it right the first time. It's a miracle. Then, of course, my computer makes random noises. So, welcome to Moz House Podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm actually doing really good. You guys' weather is really nice out here, comparatively to Seattle, right? So, it's been beautiful. It's been really nice to kind of hang out and enjoy your fall.
The weather has been amazing the past couple of days. It's been a treat, especially since like 2 weeks ago it was 90 degrees every day. Something was going horribly wrong with the weather.
I was actually watching the weather
over here. Make sure it wasn't going to be too
please,
hot.
please, for the love of all that is good and right in the world, no more humidity.
Yeah. I love the fall and the winter. Those are my favorite seasons. Although I was born in June. So I like summer, but I only like it for like the events happening this summer. I don't like it for the weather, really. Well, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and your art?
I am an artist, obviously. Otherwise, why would I be here? So I identify as what I like to call a mixed blood artist. I was born and raised in Northwestern Montana on the Flathead Indian Reservation. And so I have sort of a mix of Indigenous and non-Indigenous aesthetics, processes, and materials I like to work with. And when I was younger, I had every intention of, becoming an artist, a professional artist. And that didn't pan out. So for the first, until I was in my 40s, I didn't really do art. And then somewhere around the time I hit 50, I decided that I really wanted to concentrate on being an artist. And so I went back to school and I got an undergraduate degree, and then I took a year off, and then I went back and got a master's degree. And so now I'm pretty dedicated to being a professional artist and instructor. I teach at Bellevue College in Seattle. Well, Bellevue, actually. They'd be pretty mad if I called them Seattle. So my work is mainly about being a mixed blood person and the experiences of being a mixed blood person. And I like to contemplate and really examine systems of assimilation and the patriarchy, and the role of the Catholic Church in boarding schools and other assimilationist systems. That's kind of my elevator speech, right there.
You have a very unique journey to getting to Moz House, which is cool. I love a lot of the other people I talked to, just went straight to being an artist, and then that's all they did. I did not straight to being an artist. I went to college for marketing and business, and then I left. And I was like, I want to be an artist. That's what I wanted to do the entire time. Always loved making videos. So I was like, well. And then it just takes a little while to figure it out, honestly. Which is what I tell my friends that who are my age, you just gotta take your time. They're like, people are doing this and that. I'm like, well, everyone is at their own pace, which is nice. So I know it's kind of strange not to start with asking a question about your art, but I noticed that you originally studied anthropology.
I did.
And I have connections to anthropology myself as well.
Right on.
So I wanted to ask you about that. How did you find yourself doing that? What did you do after your degree?
Well, so when I originally went to college, I had to stay in-state, because the in-state fees, it was much cheaper to stay in-state. But there were two colleges that I could have chosen. One was University of Montana, which was in Missoula, which is about an hour outside of my reservation. And the other was Montana State University, which is out in Bozeman, out on the plains, and about 5 hours away from my hometown. And so Missoula was the party town. If you wanted to go party, you went to Missoula. And I really felt like if I went to Missoula, I wouldn't get anything done, and I get kind of sucked into the parties. And so I decided to go to Bozeman, but that ended up not being a really great choice. They had an art department, but it wasn't, this was in the mid 80s, and what they were teaching was not what I wanted to learn. I just didn't see myself as that kind of artist. I'm not an abstractionist. I'm not there's a lot of stuff that was happening, and I just did not appeal to me. So, but I had this idea that in order to be successful, you had to get a college degree. And I kind of blame my brother for that. He was the first person in our family to go to college, and he was very successful. And I was like, well, I've got to be like my brother. I have to go to college, right? So I was looking at the catalog. In anthropology, is real near art in the catalog. And so I was like, I'll take Anthropology 101, see, what it's all about, because I had to have an elective anyway, right? And ended up falling in love with anthropology. Really, really liked the subject, enjoyed the research, learned a lot about the scientific method and logic, and I had to take a bunch of math classes, which wasn't the best, but I ended up participating in a couple of archaeological digs, one out at Three Forks, which is 6,000-year-old chert mine, and chert is a kind of flint. And this chert has been found all the way down in Mesoamerica. Oh, wow. So, it was a very important archaeological dig. And I worked on that, and then I worked on a couple other things. And so I really enjoyed the aspects of that. I enjoyed the research. I mean, we're talking about deep time here, 250,000 years ago. And why was it that North America didn't have any, cows or anything like that, and it only had buffalo? Why was it that we didn't have, a bunch of other stuff and draft animals, basically? Come to find out, there was this big faunal die-off, and so everything that was susceptible to it died. And that's why America didn't have draft animals, whereas Europe still did. And so, so there's these questions based on my own heritage that I had about what was going on the continent that got answered by anthropology. And then I just stayed because I enjoyed it. Yeah, I mean, if I had not seen it in the catalog, I probably wouldn't have taken it.
That's so interesting. So I really brought it up. I was so interested in your experience with anthropology. When I was junior in high school, my uncle David, on my dad's side, I'm also, I guess you could say, mixed blood artist. And my dad is French and Jewish. So, but his brother is an anthropologist, PhD from University of Toronto.
Wow.
I went with him to Hungary with a bunch of college and grad students for a month in Rudabanya, Hungary, and we just dug in the dirt trying to find the missing link, basically. And we did find a missing link, which was really cool. But I became so, I didn't want to go at first, but I was like, it's a trip to Hungary. Who's just going to be like, oh no, and it was fun. I had a really good time, met some great people. But I became a person that could put a rock in his mouth and know it was a turtle shell from 3 million years ago. And I've never been the same since that day when I realized what I had become. Yes, that is my anthropology. And then I was always been interested in it, but I never made it my career after the traumatizing dig in the field and realizing what I was now. So that's how I wanted to bring it up. So now back to the art. How would you describe yourself as an artist, I guess? In terms of completely need to rephrase the question, but how do you describe some of your art processes?
So I think a lot about both Indigenous and non-Indigenous ways of seeing and making. Mm-hmm. And I look for places that touch or almost touch between them. And what I mean by that is, let's take paint, for instance, right? I'm super interested in paint. I love paint. I went through an atelier style training, which is very Western European, and learned how to paint like the old masters. But paint is also a tradition in the Indian sense too. And so I've become very interested in rock art and the pigments in rock art and where the pigments come from and what they're mixed with. There was a vermilion mine near Helena, Montana that my tribe had access to. So, and that's something that a lot of scholars would say, well, we didn't have vermilion in America until after Europeans came, which is actually untrue. And there are instances of, I believe it's the Lakota burning umber to get a burnt umber rather than just a raw umber, which again, most people would say, well, that didn't really happen until after first contact, and that's actually not true. So there's these painting traditions and pigments that were traded across land. There's pigments, there's selenite and vivianite that you can get out on the Northwest coast that made their way inland. And so, big trade routes for these colors and what the colors meant. And there's a whole list of what colors mean in my tradition. For instance, blue is a sacred color. Well, you also see blue as a sacred color in Catholicism. Blue is used for Mary's robes and only for Mary's robes. And so I look for these places where the ideas are very close, if not kind of the same. And then I work in that space. And it's not easy, obviously. I do a great deal of research sometimes on trying to figure out where I want to go. But it's really someplace where I feel pretty comfortable, especially as a mixed blood artist. I can't ignore the fact that I'm in this culture. The dominant culture is Western European aesthetics. But I also can't ignore the fact that I have Indigenous aesthetics and thought processes and actually processes of making. That's one of the reasons why I'm very interested in twine weaving right now, so that I can kind of figure out, okay, how do I want to use this? What does it say? 90% of my viewers are going to be non-Indigenous. So, how can I bring these thoughts to them and vice versa? And so that's kind of where I'm landing right now. I don't know if I'm successful.
Well, you're explaining it very well. But brought to my mind, I was just thinking about, what are some modern things that are, in the middle of both Native American culture and European culture that we, that not necessarily art-wise, but maybe, things people do. I was just been thinking, I'm having trouble thinking of some. The best I could think of was, lacrosse, I guess now is a white-dominated sport.
Right.
But most Native Americans, they are headhunted to go into college for that sport. But white people love that sport.
Right.
Especially around New York area and the Tri-State area. It's getting huge. Everywhere it's pretty big now, but lacrosse is huge. Getting big. If you want to get into college for playing a sport and you don't like football or baseball or anything, pick lacrosse. Because they're looking for people to play for that. And I saw that you've mastered probably 6 or 7 different forms of art, if I'm just going to say off the top of my head. And do you have a favorite?
No.
No?
No, I think paint is probably, if I had to be forced to pick a favorite, I think paint would be my favorite. But I'm drawn to a lot of different processes, and a lot of it has to do with just a sheer curiosity of what can I make with this? What can I say with this? What will this say to my viewer? And it's a lot of it has to do with the message, the conversation that I want to have with my viewer. And I know that a lot of artists are like, well, I don't care if my viewer gets anything out of it, but that is not how I feel about it. Everything I make is a conversation starter with whoever views it. And it took me a long time to admit that because, you're supposed to not be, I guess you're supposed to not care. I don't know. But yeah, everything I make is a conversation.
It's very interesting. It's since you brought the conversation up because my favorite thing I think I saw that you made, which is a little ridiculous, that it's my favorite, but the snail cat, for some reason, I just loved it. I saw it, and I was like, oh my God, I love this. And I sent it to all my friends. I was like, look at this.
Awesome.
And they said in the modern slang, they're like, oh, that goes hard, which is that's really cool.
I was not allowed to sell that painting. My husband glommed onto it, and so it's in his office. And that actually, You probably saw Ladybird with that too. Those two paintings, I did those my junior year of my undergraduate program, and they led to a real breakthrough. They are neither one thing nor the other. They exist in an in-between space. And my senior year, I was getting ready to do my BFA show, and I was desperate. I didn't know what I was going to do. So I ignored it my first semester, because that's what you do when you don't want to think about anything. You ignore it. And then halfway through my Christmas break, I was looking at those two paintings and realized that that's me. I'm neither one thing nor the other. I am one and I am other, and so I produced my BFA show in 14 weeks after having that breakthrough with those. So it's interesting that you would gravitate towards those. And that the Snail Cat remains one of my biggest sellers when I sell prints.
Yeah, it is. I don't know what it was. Like, one of my friends said, his name is Robert. He goes, how do you come up with that? How do you even come up with that idea and then just make it? Like, he can imagine thinking of like a snail cat, but you can never imagine having the ability to actually make it looking like that. It was just such a nice, I don't know, I just really like that piece of art. And I guess so I think I know what art you might be most proud of in my head. But I would like to know, which piece of art are you most proud of?
Oh, well, it wasn't on my website.
Really?
So, yeah. So I'm getting ready for a big show in downtown Seattle at King Street Station. As a matter of fact, I have 2 weeks after I leave here to finish stuff, and then I start installing. And so the piece that I'm most proud of, it's 43 feet long. And It's 30 inches wide, and it's 3 inches thick. And it's basically giant beads. They're about the size of a really large donut. And
how did you even get those?
I made them.
Wow.
All 1,716 of them. It's a visual representation of the 132 years that the Bitterroot Salish had been removed from the Bitterroot Valley. And so the Bitterroot Salish followed a lunar calendar, so there's 13 beads per row. And so this thing is just, it's a monster.
Wow.
And I live in a small house, so it has never been together, and it's not on my website. But I am so proud of myself for sticking with it for 3 years, because I started it right before I went to graduate school, and so I worked on it off and on, and then I graduated in August of last year, came home, gave myself about a month to just sort of, deal with being done with school and all the projects I'd put off at home, and then I started working on it, and I put in about 2 to 3 hours every weekday from September 21st until June.
Wow.
Yeah. And so, and I'm super proud of it. It's made out of cast foam. So I actually learned how to cast foam, and it's a 2-part foam. And so I cast the beads, and then I skinned them with paper clay, and then I painted them, and then I sealed them with really thick gloss coat so they look like beads. And then I put them on a baker's rack that I happened to find at Goodwill, because they had to cure for a while, and then I strung them up, and so there are 7 6-foot-long panels sitting on a rack in my garage waiting for me to load them up and take them to Seattle. And I cannot wait to put it all together. But yeah, that's what I'm most proud of. What do you think I'm most proud of?
I was thinking was the beaded portraits. So I was halfway with the beads.
Yeah.
Because those are amazing. Although I love the snail cat, I can tell that those were a different type of feat of just being an artist. I'm really proud of those. I really am. Those are, I have such a love-hate relationship with Edward S. Curtis. He was bankrolled by J.P. Morgan to come out and document the vanishing race. And I am just, I hate the guy for many reasons, but these are still pictures of Indigenous people. And so, I had a coffee table book that somebody had given me, and I was looking through it one day, and it's rare that he will note a woman's name.
And it's kind of rare that he notes anybody's names. Mostly it comes out as, Flathead female type or Spokane maiden or, that sort of patriarchal kind of scientific specimen kind of thing that goes on. And it just struck me as very dehumanizing. And so I decided that I would steal back these people's faces and bead them into an Indigenous portrait, rename them, and give him no credit whatsoever. That's why the counting coup on Curtis. And then encourage people to take pictures of them so that picture is what people remember and not Curtis. And I've got 7 of them. And I plan to keep making them until I'm dead because he took a lot of photos. And I've already written my will so that when I die, these things will go to the tribe that the person was from. They're not for sale. The ancestors are not for sale. And so it's probably one of my most passionate projects. I'm going to get nothing out of it other than the satisfaction of stealing stuff from Curtis, which is pretty satisfying. I'm digging it.
What's the process behind making a portrait of someone with beads? I can't even think about the setup, just the setup for that of like, you have to count how many beads you need.
I had a really great mentor at Mass Art. I did it in low residency, so I stayed embedded in the area, and then I had a local mentor. And one of my favorite instructors from Cornish, which is where I got my undergraduate program, his name was Preston Wadley. And so I asked him to be my mentor. And we were talking about beads because I was trying to bring beads into my practice as something to sort of work through. And I was complaining because beads only come in certain colors. There's only certain colors you can get. And he's like, well, who cares if you can't get those colors? Use another color. And I was like, oh my God, that's really smart because a lot of ledger art doesn't care about color. It's just, it's a green horse or it's a blue horse. And so that was the first part of it. And the second part of it also from Preston. Preston was my drawing instructor at Cornish and introduced me to contour drawing. And so beads have a very certain lineality, right? They're longer than they are fat, basically. And so you can suggest contours of the face using that lineality. And it's probably one of the most satisfying pieces that I do because it just flows, and I think about the structure of the face. There was one that I did just last month. I think I finished it. Of a child's face, and the architecture of children's faces is much different than an adult face. And so that was very interesting to me. And the architecture of clothing and so everything's kind of this contour map of what that stuff is. And then I just use the lineality of the bead to follow it. And it just happens. So that's my thought process. It's kind of trusting that it's going to work out.
Wow. Seems extremely complicated to me still in terms of just like the logistics of making something like that. I do beadwork pretty often because we do workshops here.
Right.
Beadwork. And I've been doing beadwork every week for over a year now, and I'm still very much a beginner and learning everything, and it is so hard for me to do it. So I guess how long have you been working with beads? Just
forever. It was probably one of the first art mediums that I was introduced to.
Wow.
I used to, there was, on my reservation, there wasn't really any place you could get beads when I was little. And so I would go to the dime store, and they had these beaded bracelets that you could get from China that they brought in to sell as tourist things. And so I would go buy those because they were fairly cheap, and I would painstakingly take them apart, sort all the beads, and then see what I could make out of what I had. So I've been doing beadwork probably since I was about 5 or 6 or 7, a long time.
So I know a lot of people who do beadwork, like especially when they're young, they like to make the same thing over and over and over again. What was it? What were you making?
Rainbows.
Rainbows?
Rainbows. Yeah, rainbows on blue backgrounds. I still have a couple pieces from when I was little. I love the progression of color, and you can kind of see that in some of my painting. and especially in some of my other sculptures, the progression of color from red to orange to yellow to green to blue, that for some reason, that just makes me happy. And so I often do progressions of color. The beaded portraits feature that pretty distinctly because there's these progressions of color in the face from, dark red to the yellows. And then the background, of course, is blues. And so I'm playing with European color theory because it's a predominance of orange and blue, which are opposites. So, but the blue is sacred to the Seli'š and the Qlispe'a. So I'm also kind of thinking about my own heritage when I'm thinking about that too. So yeah, the colors really, that progression.
So as someone who has looked into your Instagram, I know what you've been working on while you've been here. A lot of stuff. So can you tell us a little bit about your experience at Ma's house, what you've been working on while you're here?
This has been such a great experience. This is my first residency ever.
Wow. And first podcast.
And first podcast. Lots of firsts. I'm probably the least social artist in residence they've ever had. I think I have left my room only to eat and to do a couple of other things. It's such a gift to have undisturbed space and time. I love my husband and I love my kid, but
there's always the but.
Before I had my kid, I wasn't in a space to take advantage of something like this. And after, of course, the kid comes first, right? And even though he's 26, I still have this maternal, got to drop everything. And he has a sixth sense about when I'm working on stuff in my studio. I took over the basement and then I took over the living room. So I have most of the house is mine. And he has a sixth sense when I start working on something and I'm really thinking about it, he comes out to chat at me. And it just never fails. And so, like I said, I love him. I really do. But it's just oh my God, could you just give me 5 minutes? And so, I remember the first day that I was here, it was so quiet. There was nothing going on. And I didn't have to worry, because when you're in your own house, you were like, oh, I should fix that sink, or I need to go do laundry, or I should get dinner ready, or my friend has asked me to come over, or, there's just this litany of things that are constantly happening. And I think that Ma's house has really given me 2 weeks worth of very, very concentrated time. And so what I've been working on, I came here with a couple of different things. I wanted to, get twine weaving kind of under my belt. This is an Indigenous process, but I kind of want to pull it into my contemporary practice, kind of like beadwork. And so I'm contemplating what weaving means to me, what weaving means to my viewer, what kind of messages I can send with it. And I haven't really... I still haven't really grokked that. The other thing I wanted to do was I've been doing a lot of block printing and then just block printing multiples on one page. And so this idea of individuals in a community and, what that might say about that particular thing that I'm block printing. Probably my favorite one of those is the one with the horses. There's horses all over the place. And and the blue color, the sacredness of the horse. And so that was something I had been working on that for about 3 or 4 months and really wanted time to just sort of make a bunch of stuff and then see what it looked like. And then the third thing, I actually brought one of my beaded portraits with me to try and work on because it's due for that show. And I wanted to get some concentrated time working on that. And then anything else that sort of suggested itself. One of the things that suggested itself was to do block print and then add watercolor onto the backgrounds and see how I felt about that. And, and then I, doing some acrylic studies of the area. Place is really important to me. And so I've been just sort of feeling how the place feels, looking at it, looking at the shadows, looking at the light, looking at the colors and the smells and the sounds. And so that has suggested stuff. And so most of the time, most mornings I'll get up and do an acrylic study. So yeah, that's what I've been working on.
What does this place feel like?
This space feels so energized, right? I mean, it's clear that there has been a lot of love in the area, and it's clear that it's an energetic kind of place, but it's still very calm. And it's interesting. I mean, the trees are different from where I grew up, but they're still trees. And the fact that you're surrounded by trees here is glorious. I love it. And so, yeah, it feels good. The energy feels good. I wish I had more words to describe it.
No, I think that's a good reason. That's a good enough, honestly. So, have you ventured out of Shinnecock at all?
Yeah. I had a friend, the people that I stayed with when I was in Boston, because I had to go back during the summers for that program. The people that I stayed with in Boston, one of them came down and we did the tourist thing and ran all over the place and looked at the parish and the art center and the ocean and kind of looked at all the touristy stuff and ate good food. And so it took some time to kind of come up for air and look around. And I came out here. Long Island to me, because I'd never been out here, I thought it was just going to be, a complete, just city, all kinds of, no real green spaces, just completely populated, right? I didn't realize that Long Island would have spaces, green spaces, so many green spaces. And so that was kind of a revelation.
Long Island is very special, I feel like. Don't find many places like Long Island, especially Southampton on Earth, which is really cool. What did you go into like the Southampton town at all?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Did you like it there?
I actually liked it.
I actually really like it there too.
I mean, it kind of reminded me of where I live right now. I live between Bremerton and Silverdale, which is across the Sound from Seattle. And so it's got kind of a hometown feel, but it's still, you can still access the big city. And so it really reminded me of that a lot, because everybody, I went to the Stop and Shop, to get my groceries. Everybody knew everybody. And, that's kind of where I'm at in Silverdale. Everybody kind of knows us. We shop on a Saturday. We shop at the same place on a Saturday. Hello, how are you? Good to see you again, kind of thing. It was very nice.
One thing that happens, like during the summer, you come at the perfect time to experience like people who are still here right now, like actually live here in Southampton and in Shinnecock. They're just here for the summer, which tons of people do. They just come for like 3 months. And then the grocery stores and everything are so packed, you don't see people that you know anymore. You're just like, oh my God, you're just like trying to run around, trying to dodge everybody, not get hit some other cart. The town feels very different. But this time of year, everyone still goes outside, and you finally get to see people that that you've been seeing for years again, and not the random 20 people my age showing up for party weekend we're like Instagram famous or something. I don't know. It's interesting. Interesting. Did you have a chance to go to Tate's Bake Shop?
I did not. I'll have to go down there. I gotta go into town probably on Friday before I do my Bridgehampton thing, and UPS home some of the work that I've done. Because I didn't anticipate having pieces larger than my suitcase. So, so I'm going to go into UPS, and so I'll be sure to go to Tate's Bake Shop.
If you're looking to bring home some souvenirs to your husband and son, get them some cookies.
I'll never make it home, dude.
They honestly, that's true. They are so good. There's something special about the cookie. There's a whole story we can go into about that place. But Tate's Bake Shop, best cakes ever. The Marie Antoinette cake. Too good. Just great there. That's every artist in residence. I like to suggest that place,
right on.
Even though It's not native owned or anything, but it's just like true
Good
Southampton.
thing. Nice.
Yeah, it's delicious.
Yeah, I'll have to look it up because I have a layover in Dallas of all places.
I'm upset at Dallas.
Well,
right now.
I'm a notorious cheapskate, so whatever ticket's the cheapest, I gravitate towards it. And so, I have a layover in Dallas, so that's why those cookies will never make it home.
I only am upset with Dallas right now because they beat the New York Jets on Sunday really badly, and they hurt my feelings.
Oh.
So now I'm mad at them. They also beat the New York Giants. They beat both
Did
New
they
York
really?
teams again.
Oh my gosh!
They beat the New York Giants 40-0.
Oh,
they didn't even score once.
That's not a beating. That's a spanking.
Yeah. They ruined the Giants' entire season. I was hanging out with one of my best friends, and we're at a birthday party from my other best friends, and he's like, "Hunter, I have to get home right now. The Giants game is on. Been waiting all year to see him." And so we're like, "Fine, Kyle, we'll take you home." We like rush him home, and then we go back and hang out. And we're like watching or whatever, and it just says 40-0. And we're like, I'm laughing. I think it's hilarious because I'm like, this dude rushed home, begged us to take him home just to watch us probably turn the TV off after 20 minutes and just stop.
Yeah, there's a certain point at 40-0 where you know it's not going to come back.
There's just no chance. Yeah, and then it was great. It was a great moment for me. Because I've known those guys for like 20 years. So it's nice when like people have like slight inconveniences that are funny like that for us. Let's see. Is there anything I haven't asked you yet? You've done a good job. You've been sailing through the questions. Good ones left.
Oh, right on.
Okay. So, when you decided to take art seriously again, or make it like a full-time thing, go back to school, where did you see yourself taking your art career?
Oh, that's a good question. I ostensibly went back to get a degree so that I could teach. Because in Washington State, you can't teach at the collegiate level without a master's degree. I didn't really think about becoming a professional artist until, probably my senior year at Cornish. And then I was like, could I really be a professional artist? I mean, could I really do this? Turns out, yeah. And I didn't really see myself sitting in a residency. That wasn't on my radar. It wasn't on my radar to have a show in downtown Seattle. It wasn't right on my radar to, be in a lot of different shows over the last year. And I certainly didn't really think about, when I was looking around at grad schools, I wasn't really thinking about anything other than just the end game of getting a master's degree to teach. And luckily, she was the chair of the art department when I was at Cornish, and Bonnie Biggs was an alum of Mass Art, and so she urged me to go there because the program is very similar to Cornish, and I really thrived at Cornish. And so I ended up going to Mass Art, and the program was amazing. And I really sort of started thinking about, okay, well, I guess I'll give this professional artist thing a shot. So to answer your question, I didn't really see myself sitting here until pretty late in the game. And so I'm still trying to figure out what being a professional means to me, other than just making a lot of work. And I'm certainly doing that. I actually treat it like a job. When I'm not teaching, I have studio days. And so Tuesdays and Thursdays, because I usually teach on Wednesdays and Mondays, Tuesdays and Thursdays are my studio day. And everyone knows not to bother me because I'm in studio for 12 hours.
Wow.
And whatever that means, if it means research or it means actually cleaning the studio or making things or getting things together, but Tuesdays and Thursdays have become studio day. And so, and usually on Mondays, if I'm not teaching on Mondays, I do correspondence, apply for opportunities, keep my website up, whatever it is that I need to do. So I've started kind of treating it like a job.
Yeah. What does a 12-hour studio day look like?
Oh, it's magnificent. I come up for air, for food, you know. Usually what happens is I'll get up about, I want to say about 7 o'clock in the morning. I'll, get myself together and I'll have some breakfast. And depending on what I'm feeling for the day or what I have on schedule for the day, because I'm pretty schedule oriented, I'll either go into the living room studio, which is my paint and print studio, or I'll go downstairs to my multimedia studio, where I have all my messy processes. And it depends on, if I have an idea I want to work through, an experimental day, or if I have something I'm trying to finish, or, especially for King Street Station, I have to frame all my paintings. So my Tuesdays and Thursdays are going to be full of making frames. So it just depends on what I'm working on. But I basically will work until about midnight.
Wow.
That's the great thing about getting older, is that I don't need as much sleep. So I generally get up about 7. I generally go to bed about 11 or 12.
Wow.
So so that's what a 12-hour studio day looks like. I'll break for dinner, or my husband will come down and say, "Hey, I haven't seen you all day," and so
you're alive down here,
right? Yeah, or my kid will break in on stuff. But yeah, they're magnificent days because I give myself permission. Those days are for that, and favorite days. They're my favorite days.
What are some of your techniques to stay locked in on just doing all your work on those
schedules?
Schedules.
I am the schedule queen.
Wow.
I have a day planner and a month planner, and so what I will do is I will look at these beaded portraits. Because having to sit for long periods of time is bad for your circulation, right? So I'm trying to be mindful of that. So I will work on the beaded portrait anywhere from 1 to 2 hours a day. So, and I usually like doing that in the evenings because it's meditative. I feel like, I can sit down and really sort of center myself in the beadwork and then be very meditative about it. And by the time I'm done with that hour, I'm ready to go to bed, because I've kind of come down from whatever else I'm doing. So that's always scheduled from about 8 o'clock to 9 o'clock, maybe to 10, depending on how I feel about it. And then I schedule in the afternoons, I'll be like, all right, well, I need to put in about 3 or 4 hours on this painting and maybe 3 or 4 hours on that painting. And so that's, I'll go do that. And then in the mornings, maybe I've decided I want to cast some more resin faces and drill some stuff out. And so I will literally schedule those things on a day and then in a week. And so, little bites of each project. And that's basically how I did that giant beadwork sculpture. Cast beads in the morning, skin them in the afternoon, paint them the next day. There's a whole series of events that has to happen because they're so big and because it takes a week or 2 for the gloss coat to cure. So it takes me probably 4 days to take a bead from casting to finish. And so because I want them to dry overnight, because the holes don't get a lot of airflow. And so it takes overnight for them to dry. So I have to prime them before I go to bed. And then I get up and then I can add color. But then the color has to dry overnight so that I can clear coat it. And so everything kind of gets scheduled.
Wow. It's interesting. We are kind of the opposite in terms of I used to hate schedule. Used to get schedules in school. Throw mine out. Did not want it. Would just be like, I can remember when my homework's due. I could not remember when my homework was due. I don't know why I thought I could. Every time Mom was bewildered. She's like, Hunter, you can. I don't want to write it down.
Right.
I don't know what it is. But now it's on my phone. We have a Ma's house schedule. I actually love that thing because otherwise because now I know myself. As I got older, I was like, yeah, I definitely can't remember. I need schedule.
Yeah, the Google Calendar on
Google
here.
Calendar,
oh
excellent.
My God,
I have our podcast on the Google Calendar.
Nice.
And changed the game changer. I'm like, oh my God, when is this event? Oh, it's not for another 2 hours. Thank God.
Right.
When do I have to have this due? Oh God. Oh wait, it's over here. So and then just look. Makes my life so much easier.
Right.
I don't know why I was stressing myself out with not having a schedule before.
Oh, yeah. When I was younger, I was like, I don't need a schedule. I can remember all that. What really got me into schedules was when I went back to school to Cornish, to my undergraduate program. And so my commute to Cornish, because Cornish is in downtown Seattle. So I had to get up at 5:30 in the morning to catch a bus at 6:40 to get to the 7:20 ferry. And then there was an hour across to get to the bus that would take me to Cornish. So it was about an hour and a half one way. And so that's a schedule I have to adhere to, because otherwise if I miss anything, I'm not going to get to class at 9 o'clock. And I, because I was on the boat for 2 hours a day, that's 2 hours of downtime. And so I started scheduling homework for the boat so that I'd be done by the time I got home. Right. And then, I would schedule time, because they gave us our own studios there. I would, if I'm going to come into town, it's got to be worth my time. So I will schedule 5 hours or whatever. So I really didn't get into scheduling until I went back to school. And now I'm just like, where's my schedule? I don't know what I'm doing. It's become really important. And, if I didn't have that schedule, I would not have gotten that big piece done, because every day something had to happen.
So you definitely reminded me of like some inner memories of me trying to get to class. I lived on campus, but there was a couple times where I had like this 8 a.m. and there was this. I was on South Campus. I went to the University of Buffalo, middle of the winter. I have an 8 a.m. math class, and
oh no, that's just wrong.
And the guy would keep all the lights extra dim and talk monotone, and clearly I failed that class. But I remember one day I was like, I actually woke up on time. I would always be late, but I woke up on time. I was like out the door, walking to the bus, and then something happened, and I just turned around and went home. But has anything like that ever happened to you?
Oh God, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Inevitably, I mean, when I was younger, there were a lot of times I'm like, meh, I don't feel like it. And I just wouldn't do it. These days, every once in a while, there's a day where nothing goes right. Nothing. And I'll try and push through. But by about noon, if I've screwed up a bunch of stuff, I'm like, all right, I'm done. I don't care if it's Tuesday or not. I'm going to go read a book, or maybe go to the park, or go watch a movie, or, because, I'm a firm believer in manifestation. And if you think something's going to go wrong, it's going to go wrong. And I just take myself out of the situation. And I have no qualms about that. When I was younger, it was mostly because I just didn't feel like I wanted to do it. But, now I recognize that if I'm frustrated, I don't produce good art at all. I want to stab it and then set it on fire. And so it's just better to not waste the resources.
Well, when that day, what happened was, I walked out of class. I walked out of my dorm, went downstairs. I lived on the 3rd floor, and walking just had left. The wind is blowing. It's snowing, and then I hear like a thud outside, and everyone's like going over there to look. Someone had jumped out the window of like the 6th floor.
Oh, jeez.
They were fine, but I just saw it. I was just like, oh my God, I'm going back upstairs. It's like something's going on today. Something is not right. Why am I seeing people jump out the window at school right now? So I went back inside. He was perfectly fine, but I found out later. But once all the ambulances and everything got there, I wasn't even gonna make the bus in. The bus is not leaving
right
for another hour. It took 30 minutes to get to the other side of campus. I was just like, well, another day missed class, I guess.
Cut your losses.
I woken up on time. I'm making it to class, so determined. And then the universe said, not today, Hunter. Yeah. It was a sign. I mean, I wonder what happened if I actually did end up going somehow. What horrors would have awaited me at school?
See, that's why I just stop and I walk away.
Yeah, I would have been the next one to jump out the 6th floor immediately next. Okay, so a couple more questions.
Cool.
Is there something that I should have asked you about that I did not?
Oh my gosh. Not that I can think of. I mean, this is my first podcast, Hunter. I don't know what I'm doing.
Well, good. I remember my first podcast about this time last year. But good. So if there's anything that I didn't ask you about, but you can't think of it. Good. That means I did my job. And then, do you have any questions for me?
Well, you said this was your 4th season, mm-hmm. and did you see yourself getting to this point with podcasts?
I guess this was the goal of doing this part of Ma's House. When we, last year, February, March time, we came together and we were going to apply for a grant called the CRNY grant, which would basically give everyone, me, Brianna, Jeremy, and my aunt Denise, a full-time job situation through the state. And one of the things they did is like, okay, what are you going to do? What like each person on the team is going to do? And this was one of my ideas to do it. I did not see myself getting. I say now I would be like, oh, I'm pretty good at it, because now I'm past like the 6 month to a year mark where like I definitely felt like I was really bad at like 6 years. I felt like I was like first podcast. I was so nervous. I remember I came in the house. Brianna was like near the fridge, and I like grabbed a beer and drank it. I was like, I was so nervous. I was like, oh god, just one. I was like, and Brianna just like watched me do it, and she was like, what the hell are you doing? And then so it was like from there to now, definitely like in that moment of me being like so nervous, I did not see this being possible, of like being completely calm and having a routine and do all that. So the answer to your question, I guess the answer is no. But back when I originally wrote it, I was kind of saw it becoming this. But when
the possibilities.
Yeah, when I wanted to actually do it, when it's time to actually do it, I was like, holy crap. Oh, God. And then, but it's been so nice meeting all the artists, giving time to talk with them an hour and a half. And hopefully, and I think people like it, which is nice. So like yesterday, someone was asking me about the podcast. There's an event, and people were like, oh, you're the guy who does the podcast. I'm like, yes, I am. You're a cool cat. I'm like, oh, thank you. Thank you, ma'am. You shouldn't boost my head up like that, but thank you. Yeah, so that's been nice about doing that. Yeah. Well, I guess we're nearing the end of the podcast, but at the end, I always like to give the artist a chance to, the floor is yours. You can plug in all your social medias, your websites, any programs you have coming up. Oh, actually, one thing, speaking program, we had to talk about your workshop before we end the podcast.
Oh, yeah. Yes. Yeah, the Bridgehampton workshop.
So why don't you tell everyone what you're going to be doing at that?
I am going to be taking people through how to do twine weaving with little twine woven bags that are based on the Columbia Plateau traditions, which is where my heritage is centered. And I'm going to warn them now that there's no way we're going to finish in 2 hours, but I will give them all of the knowledge necessary to finish. I'm stupidly excited about it. I like teaching, and this is something that I think people will enjoy doing. Everybody has a twine woven tradition across the United States and Canada, Mesoamerica, South America. Twine weaving with cordage happens to be a very indigenous thing. And so I am pleased and kind of proud that I'm bringing this tradition. And I'm going to teach people. So it's a 2-hour workshop at Bridgehampton Museum. And I have everything. I have little kits. I've cut everything out. Everything, they just have to walk in. It'll be great. I
am very excited, too, because I love taking part of the, especially the artist workshop. I love when my Aunt Denise does the workshops. But I like trying new things with art, because I'm hoping one day I'll find something like art that I can do with my hands and on the computer that I really enjoy. So maybe it'll be that.
Yeah, maybe it will.
I'm very excited for it. All right, so now, social media, floor is yours. You can talk about, shout out people. You basically say anything you want.
Oh, so. All right. Shout outs first. Shout out to Cornish College of the Arts in Seattle, Washington, where I got my undergraduate BFA. Great school if you're looking for a really, really solid program and you want to move to Seattle. That's where you should go. UW will tell you that they're the solid program, but they're not. And a big shout out to Massachusetts College of Art and Design. That's where I got my graduate degree. Great bunch of people, great program. what I really liked about both of these programs is that I was allowed to do whatever medium I wanted to work with. I wasn't hemmed in on 2D or 3D, or you can only do paint or whatever. If I wanted to do a sculpture, I got to do a sculpture. It was I drove the bus on that. So both those programs were really, really good for me. A huge shout out to Jeremy and Brianna and Ma's house. I'm so appreciative of the fact that they brought me in and gave me a room, and just let me do what I wanted to do. A big thank you to the Bridgehampton Museum for hosting the upcoming workshop. You can catch me on Instagram at Tammie Dupuis, TAMMIE.DUPUIS. I have a website, which is DupuisCreative.com. And I promise I will be better about keeping that up after I've pushed it. I have a show coming up. If you're in the Seattle area, I have a show coming up at King Street Station. It opens November 2nd and it closes January 5th. And the first Thursdays are the big sort of reception. And if you are in the Seattle area, come down and mention the podcast, and I'll give you a big hug.
It's a good deal.
So yeah, I think that's, other than, I think that's all.
Awesome. Well, I'll put all the links in the description. Thank you so much for being on the podcast. It's been fun for me. Hopefully, first podcast was not that horrible for you. It's
been great.
Nice. Hopefully, I see you on many more. And everyone who listened, got to the end, you guys are my favorite, as always. Thank everyone so much for listening. And we'll catch you guys in the next episode of the Mouse House Podcast.